We'd like to start talking a little bit about the environment here in Brazil, specifically at this point, the market. You said recently that the market is a little dry of funds. And we have seen different Brazilian IPOs that were actually lower than expected, that raised less money than expected. Are you concerned about the state of the Brazilian market? Do you see the risk of a correction or a lower market, of even a decline in Brazil?
Not really. I see the economy continue to grow at a pace of 5% a year. And obviously there's special sectors that will grow more, like I see housing. There's a boom in the housing area. People are having mortgages, 20-year mortgages. So that's a big difference. In the commodity area, I mean, China is continued to buy. The price of iron ore is a great proof to it, because if you remember, beginning of the year, people were talking about 40%. Now the last prices are in excess of 90% of price correction. That alone adds in excess of $10 billion to Brazil's exports a year. So I really, and also the other commodities, see, soya beans, there's almost 20% plus production increase. Corn, which is a surprise. Brazil is not a traditional corn producer. There's a corn also in excess of 20% increase. So I don't see it's not. There may be some excesses in some small areas. I don't follow all the companies in the market, but my specific areas, commodities and infrastructure, it's booming.
These are areas towards macro or exports, for instance, and the local demand is also growing exponentially. Mr. Meirelles, the central bank president, said that his challenge is to prevent the economy from overheating. Do you see that risk?
Yes, because if you have bottlenecks, and Brazil has bottlenecks in logistics, infrastructure, he will have to work on it, and normally the tendency is to eventually increase rates a little bit. But I think that the growth rate of Brazil is so substantial that it won't damage Brazil's 5% plus growth rate.
Higher interest rates are not gonna curb this growth?
No, will not curb it. This is my view.
You have a plan of investments of the order of $15 billion in a 3-year realm in your group. There are several other large infrastructure projects happening in the country right now, apart from your own. There are hydro plants, 2 million low-income houses. Isn't there a risk for prices and availability of resources actually weighing on the budgets of those projects and your costs?
Yes, you mean on the capex of these projects? Yeah, possible. Yeah, in the last 5 years, I haven't seen a company coming in with 100% of what they had budgeted, because obviously we had a big recession a year and a half ago, that started a year and a half ago, and then before that there was a boom. So companies had it very difficult in really identifying their capex for the projects. So there has been overruns. And I think because of there's a lack of engineers, our group, we have seen an advantage because we hire from others and we pay better salaries than the average. But I think it's a bottleneck.
So do you see a risk of overrun in your costs, in your projects, in this $15 billion projects you have?
Yes. Minor, but I think the essence of our projects is that they are extremely low cost when we produce a unit of iron ore, an oil barrel, oil, $8 lifting cost oil. It really doesn't matter if you have a 10% higher capex, So because they are low cost and efficient projects, you can easily absorb these extra costs. It's when you have marginal projects that's a problem. I think the X group of companies, our culture has been one of being very efficient and possibly the lowest cost in the sector. So,
and your partners, you have several of your companies are traded, openly traded. The last one, OSX, it was the last IPO. You raised around $1.4 billion last month, but the stock came down deeply. There was a concern on environmental licenses towards that project. In this project specifically, I would like to go through the others as well, but do you have the approval for the area? Are you prepared, or in your budget, is it counted on that risk as well?
Yes, I mean, I think Brazil has all these different institutions, public attorney offices, the environmental agencies, and they're extremely diligent. They keep questioning things, which I think is very healthy. It's a check and balance process. And yes, we budgeted these things in. I think what is important to stress is that in the last 7 years, we have obtained 100 environmental licenses for very complex projects. This is a project that will employ more than 9,000 people. So imagine the local community, the government of Santa Catarina, and even the country, because we're going to be building probably the world's biggest and most efficient shipyard in the world. So we did send the Fatima, which is the agency for Santa Catarina. We took several members to visit Korea to see how you can deploy a clean shipyard. So that's important. So it has to continue, and we think it's a healthy process.
And so those licenses you believe those licenses will be granted?
Yes, they will be granted. Same way, as I said, 100 licenses in 7 years is a hell of a track record.
Do you steel prices are also supposed to jump, so that's another possible price raise on your investments. Even being an ore producer yourself, how much of that raise is included in the costs of building a shipyard, for instance?
Yeah, shipyard is very much cement and not really steel. Steel is really the units that we're going to be producing. But these costs, if they're increased in steel plate, they will be passed on the daily rates that are handed over then to our clients. I mean, OGX in the case, or Petrobras, or whoever will lease equipment from OSX.
So your construction projects, apart from the shipyard itself, there is the superport, and that the steel price is not a concern for you?
No. As I said, when economies are booming, prices always go up. It's very difficult for anybody to make a statement and say the prices won't increase. Important is that whatever you're producing is that you are a low-cost and efficient producer. So if you know that you're among the 20-25% lowest cost producer, whoever is in the 30, 40, 50 category will have higher prices than you. So these costs everybody has to pass on. So it's not it's not only my problem, it's a problem of the world economy.
But you're in the building process, so to speak, so you're not at the moment yet to pass on the costs. So you're ready to actually absorb those costs before you have your clients.
Yes, we are.
Foreign companies, locals, all have concerns about limitations, regulations, the cost of doing business in Brazil, operating in the country. What difficulties do you see in Brazil, and what do you think is necessary to change?
Well, I think, for instance, these environmental aspects of technicalities, if it's a federal decision or local decisions, maybe the rules should be clearer. They are not, so there's always a dispute if it should be decided at the federal level or at the local level, which is exactly what's happening to us in Santa Catarina. So these things, maybe with time you get better. But so far, our projects, we have been executing on our projects. It's part of being in a democracy. It's part of maybe Brazil in the past not complying with very strict rules, because we have to be environmentally and socially correct. You see, we don't want to build a Brazil that was built when you have these big projects and then lots of favelas around. We don't want that. It has to be part since the beginning, when you conceive the project. The BNDES is very keen that you take care of this. So you have to look at it as a 360-degree approach. So if you do this, if you tackle projects under this umbrella, things happen, and you get everybody's support. You get the federal bank support, because otherwise they won't finance you. So it's quite well engineered. If I, my judgment is maybe in some areas they need more staff, qualify more people, just put more people to execute, because there's lots of projects that are filling up. There's a line that sometimes you have to wait for a couple of months because there are, I don't know, 5, 6 projects in front of you. So more people and more qualified people to help on the execution.
Do you see those limitations actually curbing foreign investment in the country?
I'm sorry?
Do you see the limitations, the cost of business, of doing business in Brazil, and the difficulties and reforms that are needed in labor reforms, for instance? Do you see that as stopping foreign investment from actually coming in the country? Would we have more foreign investment with the regulation?
I think so, yeah. People would look at Brazil differently if we would have, simpler rules. Definitely, that for sure. But Brazil is such a large market. To have 200 million potential consumers, 190 million potential consumers. So there's a massive pent-up demand. What businesses want is to have people to consume your products. People are not leveraged, very little indebted. So you have the ingredients for growth. So maybe people should come now because the opportunities are now, and then wait, and hopefully our future governments will improve in these regulations. But I would not miss the opportunity.
I want to ask you a question that is linked to this gorgeous view you have behind here, this privilege you have of working in such a beautiful place. You were the main contributor to the Rio 2016 bid, and you had several projects geared towards getting the city ready for the Olympics. What now? After the tragedy we saw last week with the rains in Rio, what do you think is needed? Are you going to contribute more cash to get the city ready? Do you think the city has what it takes to actually be ready?
Well, there's a lot of money that will be invested, for the Olympics, till the Olympics in 2016, and a lot has to be done and planned. I think, we Cariocas, we have the talent and to be able to put these games and make a show, as good as the Chinese. We should try, or at least with this landscape, we have something that nobody has. Huh? This is the most beautiful city built by God, no? Paris is the most beautiful city built by man. This is the most beautiful city built by God. So, yes, we have the talent. I myself, I have taken the challenge of preparing the marina for the Olympics, together with the Grael. Torben Grael will help me engineer, whatever is best. Obviously, complying with the committee, with the Olympic Committee, the installations so that you can receive the sailing boats, whatever sports are necessary, will use the installations of the marina. And obviously, the logistics, infrastructure planning is massive, and I will have to see further. I mean, I'm not so involved with the city's management to be able to give you a precise opinion on that.
Would you be ready to invest more?
Yes. Oh yes. We love this city. This is the base of our company. Most of our oil will be produced right in front of Búzios, which is part of the state of Rio de Janeiro. So definitely we will invest more.
Not in Rio, but in the landscape of the state of Rio and outside in the coast of Brazil, we have this huge oil find. You classify it as virtually virgin, how you describe Brazilian oil fields. It's going to take tens of billions of dollars to actually extract oil from the pre-salt areas, as they are called. These finds are. Are you confident that this is going to happen? Is Brazil going to be what, Saudi Arabia of South America?
Yes, I see. If you look 10 years out, speaking macro, I see almost $1 trillion economy here happening in the oil arena. Our areas are in shallow waters, which is, shelf technology, very easy to deploy. It's just time and execution. For instance, we already seeing that our Campos blocks alone, where we had 10 wells. We drilled 10 wells, and we have 17 finds. So it's a hit ratio of 170%. Tell me about rich, and I mean this is unique in the world. In a way, it shows you also how virgin it is, because if it was a massively, drilled area or consumed area, you wouldn't have these incredible results. So obviously, it's talent of the company, capital that we have in the company. So I see, our OGX, we see we'll be producing today. Planned today, with the information we have today, we'll be producing 1.4 million barrels a day, which is 70% of what Petrobras has produced. So by 2019, as a private company, this is a big number.
How do you see your company in the as a percentage of the market share of the oil in Brazil in 2019?
Well, let's work out by 2019, Brazil could be producing 6 million barrels. So we'd be 1.4, so 25% of that number. So it's a big number.
Better investors are not complaining about your proposition in that area. When do you expect to actually start producing from or your current field?
We through the deal we've done with OSX, the company that just went public, we bought an FPSO production unit for 100,000 barrels a day. This unit will start producing first quarter of next year. So first quarter of next year, we can put our hands in oil. So if it's President Juma or President Serra, we're going to invite them to the inauguration to put the hands on the first big Brazilian private company oil, which is, I think, historic. It's historic because also from concept to production, it will be a record in this country, probably in the world. Because of shallow waters. Not that we are so much better than the others. It's because, we were able of recruiting top talent that we have in Brazil. So execution capabilities in concerning people we have. And doing this type of exploration and production is something very common in the country. Difficulty, or more difficult, is the pre-salt arena. Okay, we are talking about shallow waters. We think today, OGX, we have in Campos alone 10 billion barrels of oil in shallow waters.
Talking in your other areas, another partner, the Chinese. Next week we have the BRIC summit, and we will have the Chinese delegation and the president here. You invited him over. Is he going to visit your port project?
No, he will not be visiting, but we're going to meet him on Friday in Brasilia. With President Lula, we're going to sign our joint venture with Wuhan in relation to a 5 million ton steel mill in the Açu port, which is a $5 billion joint investment. And also, the same day, another team of the company will be taking 114 Chinese businessmen representing 65 Chinese companies who are eager to participate in basically come to Brazil, build factories in Açu, because Açu is an industrial port complex, which will give them logistics, so they can receive, say, components from outside. The rest will come from the interior of Brazil, local labor, and they'll be able to produce, say, electrical cars, electrical bicycles, so many things that the Chinese are doing so well today. So they have started to understand, the Japanese have gone international 30 years ago. The Koreans 10 years ago. The Chinese are starting to move their factories out of China. So the steel mill with us will actually be by far the largest investment in the country. I mean, it will be 6 times larger than everything that the Chinese have ever invested in this country. And if you add of the 65 companies that are coming, I don't know what hit ratio you want to use, but understanding the pent-up demand that we have in Brazil, a huge market. And the Chinese, they have evolved in many areas. They have world-class, quality in their products, and they're cheap. So it's a great combination for Brazil.
what part will the Chinese invest in this $5 billion project?
They have 70% of the joint venture, so they'll be investing $3.5 billion. We'll be investing 1.5.
And the mill itself will be an independent structure from your companies?
Yeah, it'd be an EBX,
separate.
it'd be the holding company will be investing in none of the existing public companies.
And the other 65, the other companies that are coming, the other 65, do you have what do you expect as far as investments in the area?
Consumer products, as I said, electrical cars, there are several Chinese companies that have been visiting Brazil in the last couple of months or many months, and what ASU offers is a hub. It's a logistic hub, where they can have cheaper energy, world-class logistics, which is really the combination what's so attractive to them. So that's why not only Chinese, but other steel mills, we're negotiating with other steel mills. They are surrendering to the concept of the hub industrial port complex.
But in dollar terms, what do you expect to attract in this first?
Well, we see that in the next 10 years, we'll be attracting $40 billion in investment to ASU. To give you a number, it's a big number.
And that's mostly Chinese investment?
No, I wouldn't say that. We'd be surprised with the 65 companies that are coming, and I don't know how many of them will pan out. But it just shows you that the Chinese are starting to leave China, and because we know we're going to offer them the best platform to do business in this country, because most people who come to Brazil, they question, we love your country, you have a huge market, but we don't know how to get in and how to get out. Well, with an efficient port, you solve all these problems.
And how do you see, in overall, the relationship Brazil-China going forward?
I think it's a unique. It gives Brazil the dimension that only China can give. For instance, in the resource arena, the Chinese will continue to be massive consumers of iron ore, and with the steel joint venture with the Chinese, we are proving the following model that for every, say, 3 tons of iron ore that you ship in raw, we produce a ton of steel in Brazil. And with China, if you extrapolate this to a bigger number, you could dream of a number of, why not exporting 300 million tons of iron ore and producing 100 million tons of steel in this country, which is basically 3 times what we produce today. Only China can give us this type of business. And the Chinese, because they want resource security and food security, they understand how important Brazil is for the Chinese, to China. So the mutual benefits are mind-boggling.
And how do you see that relationship when you put it in the perspective of U.S.-China? What does that pan out for the U.S.?
Well, I think the U.S. companies, the big businesses in Brazil are the oil industry, offshore oil. Offshore oil needs a lot of equipment. Americans have great companies in that area, generators, turbines, compressors, big pumps. So as I continuously say when I talk to Americans, the CEOs should come down and understand how big the oil business is or is getting. We are a private example of it. Maybe people always before thought that there was only Petrobras, one big government-controlled entity, and didn't like that type of structure. But here there's private companies and the other private foreign companies that will also start to produce oil. They will need equipment because of Brazil's 70% content rule. So if they don't move, they're going to lose that opportunity. And what people have to take in mind is the size of the opportunity. You don't come for small, If Brazil, if the business opportunity would be small, you maybe keep your production in America or wherever they produce it today. But because of the content rule and because of the size of the business, it's time to come.
Can that, the BRICS then, not only China and Brazil, but getting India in there as well, can that actually change the balance as far as the world economy?
I think there's a massive wealth transfer from the developed countries to the, emerging, the BRICS. Oh, definitely. It's because, if the Chinese are potentially and the Indians are adding, the Chinese 400 million people for the next 15, 20 years. The Indians 300 million people. Brazil another 50 million people into the consumer arena. Jesus, the numbers are here, not there.
The numbers are here in your ballpark, in your field as well. You came from the outside, and in 2 years, you went into the very select club of the 10 richest men in the Forbes list. That wealth was catapulted by your IPOs, or taking your companies public. And you have more companies. You floated the idea of EBX, the holding company, going public. Yeah. Your Colombian venture going public. Is that happening? When?
No. Because what I have realized, 6-8 months ago, before we started our drilling program in OGX, our drilling program started in September last year. As I said, 10 wells, 17 finds. What's happening is that the underlying value of my companies today is at least, the total market value is around 44 billion. Before $120 billion, we're not going to go on an IPO for EBX. So it's postponed. The results, I think people, and it takes a while for people to understand the level of success. The market does. You punch a hole, you find oil, and people think, well, they find oil in a place where people found already some oil. Well, what people are not paying attention to is that we're increasing the size of our field. An example, what was, say, 500 square kilometers is extending to 1,500 square kilometers. So the size of the beast is so much bigger. So there's no way today that we would consider IPOing EBX. The underlying, because EBX is the majority of all the underlying public companies, and this value is at least 3 times higher.
Okay, so we have to wait for the 100 billion. We have to keep doing the math, right, before we can get in.
Keep doing the math, yes.
All right.
But that depends also on how much more we find, because our drilling program hasn't stopped. As I said, what the company is finding is incredible. I think people. We have to keep informing our investors through the media, to explain how big everything is and how big it still can be. So that's a challenge. So that's why we're here.
Well, you said you were going to pass Bill Gates. Now you have to pass Bill Gates and Carlos Slim as well to be #1. How soon do you expect to do that?
Well, with my friends, I joke. I already told them to clean up the mirrors on the right and the left side. So, it's a car. Maybe I pass by the right. Maybe through the left, who knows?
Right. Some recent profiles in magazines describe you sometimes as an eccentric for having a McLaren in your living room and all your businesses having an X in the name. How much do you think luck played in your success?
You work a lot, you work, and then a little bit of luck helps the whole thing. But it's basically a lot of work, putting a lot of things in the right places, and obviously timing of things that do not depend on you, depend on other circumstances is not my work. So I think it has helped me, but you help your luck. You get the notion of timing after putting so many projects into production from scratch, which is, I think, very much our culture. I think what people should appreciate is that we had this incredible increase last year in the Forbes, basically on execution, not on new deals. The deals where OGX went public is in 2008. So last year was very much the execution of a plan that we laid out a year before. So in a world that had values decline, we were the largest creator of wealth because of execution.
Your companies were in the top of evaluation at the Bovespa last year. Do you expect to repeat this phenomenon this year?
Absolutely. As I said, the oil arena is so big, OGX is so big. When people start to understand, the sizes of things I tried to explain here, yes, the value will come automatically. So that's why it's just work and time. As you know, all the companies are massive capitalized. OGX has still $4 billion in cash. Each company has a solid cash position. OGX will start producing oil first quarter next year, so cash flow. OSX, which will lease the OSX-1, the first FPSO next year, will start generating cash flow next year. MPX will start generating cash flow mid of next year, so mid to 11. MMX already generates cash flow, and LLX, which is the logistic company, starts generating cash flow mid 2012. But they're all capitalized. This is what's important.
And all projects are within schedule?
Yes, they are.
Your steel mill, is that going to have an X in its name as well?
I have to discuss this with the Chinese. I don't know.
Where did the X come from?
The X multiplies. It's very simple. But it comes from, I used to have my gold company called TVX. It was an abbreviation for Treasure Valley Exploration. So they had this X there as the abbreviation and as the stock symbol, TVX. So, it gave me always luck. And so I put my son, my Inca son, the 3 gold bars, to support all this growth, a little bit of mystical things, and you create what we have created.
What do you think, Mr. Serra and Ms. Dilma, we need for this year to win the election? The election is coming. What's your expectation?
Well, I don't know.
For anybody?
No, I'm apolitical. I vote for my country. So politics is who knows. I think it's going to be a very competitive elections. Both have chances. So. Lula is a miracle. I mean, he walks on water. But, I don't know if you can pass this. Maybe, I don't have that crystal ball.
But can we expect a volatility? Do you believe that the market is going to be weirder until the election, or is it going to be all normal?
Yes. Little, because I think what Lula probably managed extremely well was to maintain Meirelles, our central bank president, to stay till the end of the term. I think this was a magnificent, first class for Brazil. Gives us stability. This is what we want. Foreign investors want. This was a coup. So I think that's great. But however, when during the campaign, when people say certain things, maybe in the wrong context, you have maybe a little bit volatility. But the base of Brazil is so great that I'm working with the assets, so we know what's happening. And we know how big, as I repeat, the oil arena is, and oil is transformational. Oil will make Brazil, get into the, by 2015, we should be the 5th largest country in the world by GDP. I have no doubt.